In the shadows of Shadaloo, beyond the flashy arenas and World Warrior tournaments, lies one of the darkest legacies in the entire Street Fighter mythos. A legacy built not on ambition or conquest, but on the systematic breaking and rebuilding of human lives. This is the story of the Dolls, elite assassins engineered by the Dictator and Bison to act as his perfect weapons. And among them, 3 stand out, not because of their triumphs, but because of the tragedies woven into their existence. Juli, Juni, and Decapre. Today, we'll trace the lives of these 3 tragic sisters, their suffering, their moments of resistance, and ponder the question of whether these characters can ever truly be free. Starting with Juli, her story begins long before she became one of M. Bison's dolls. Originally named Julia, she was a young German girl living peacefully among the Thunderfoot tribe. Her life was stolen, however, when Shadaloo abducted her and erased everything she once was, becoming a cold, loyal doll trained to serve as one of Bison's elite assassins and bodyguards. As the second oldest of the dolls, she often acted as a quiet advisor to her peers, even if she no longer remembered the place she once called home. But one person never forgot her, her lover T-Hawk, who vowed to find and save her. Juli made a playable appearance in the home console versions of Street Fighter Alpha 3, where she and Juni often acted as paired sub-bosses before the final confrontation with M. Bison. Though their designs originated as a head swap of Cammy, the lore reveals that all 3 belonged to the same special unit within Shadaloo. In her Alpha 3 story, Juli was tasked with tracking down Cammy, codenamed Killer B, after she started to break free of Bison's control, a mission that showcased Bison's stranglehold upon the minds of the dolls. In her non-canon ending, Juli succeeds in defeating Cammy, returning to Bison, only to learn the horrifying truth. Her artificially enhanced metabolism has drastically shortened her lifespan, and she will soon die. Somewhere, deep within her subconscious, the long-repressed mind of Julia refused to accept her fate. She turns on Bison, defeats him, and watches as his body starts to crumble. Bison then reveals a final cruelty. If he dies, then so shall she. Juli collapses as her blood pressure spikes, but she is rescued by Cammy, still alive, who places her into the Psycho Drive in an attempt to save her life. Cammy warns that only one of them may survive the process, declaring that Juli will be the one to live. In T-Hawk's ending, however, he rescues her. Though she is still clearly under the influence of the defeated Dictator, he vows to save her no matter what, believing that one day, the hold Bison has on her will be gone. However, Juli reappears as a doll in the Super Street Fighter 4 OVA, suggesting she had never been rescued by T-Hawk during the events of the Alpha series, or perhaps that she returned to Bison's side somehow. In the OVA, the leader of SIN, Seth, is aware that the dolls had been programmed to assassinate him and sends Juri to a remote Shadaloo research facility to capture all 12 of them before they can carry out their orders. There's not much to say about Juli specifically here, so we'll return to this story in Juni's section later. Juli is next referenced in Super Street Fighter 4, in T-Hawk's ending. Rose informs Hawk that Juli has been rescued from Shadaloo, but is now only a shadow of who she once was. Despite her warning, Hawk insists on seeing her. He finds her living in a remote cabin under the care of an elderly couple, nearly catatonic and devoid of recognition. A single raindrop slipping down the window beneath her eye seems like a silent symbolic tear. However, with Juli's later reappearance in Street Fighter V, this ending is considered non-canon, or possibly a moment that happened before she was recaptured. In Street Fighter V's main story, As Shadow Falls, Juli returns as part of Fong's recalibrated army. Under renewed psycho power influence, she battles the heroes infiltrating Shadaloo's main base. She clashes with Cammy and is defeated, only for Cammy to almost be brought down by Vega. And while Vega is distracted by Juri, Juli and the other dolls regroup and continue their assault on the intruders. That is, until Rashid destroys Fong's control device, freeing the dolls' mind, seemingly, at least, for good. In Street Fighter VI, Juli is briefly mentioned in World Tour mode. Lily reveals that Juli is married to T-Hawk, and was like an older sister to her growing up. It seems that Hawk's long-standing vow to protect and reclaim the woman she once was has been fulfilled. Juli also maintains contact with the other dolls, particularly Juni, showing that bonds forged in captivity have carried into freedom. Like the other dolls, Juni was originally a teenage girl abducted by Shadaloo and transformed into a living weapon. Conditioned to obey without hesitation, having possibly undergone the most thorough brainwashing of all the dolls, she became one of M. Bison's highest-ranking operatives, serving directly under the Dictator and the Shadaloo Grand Masters. In Street Fighter Alpha 3, Juni's primary mission was to track down Ryu and retrieve a sample of his combat data. After accomplishing her task, she returns to Bison, who coldly informs her that now her mission is complete, she is expendable, and can die. In her non-canon ending, Juni rebels, fighting with and defeating Bison. But as Bison falls, her body begins to destabilize. Her blood pressure skyrockets, mirroring Julia's own ending. As she collapses beside Bison's corpse, Juli awakens next to her. In the haze of their conditioning, both murmur that they will always be Sir Bisons. Later, when Chun-Li and Charlie infiltrate the demolished base, they discover that Bison's body and the dolls have vanished without a trace. Only scraps of data and destroyed machinery remain, leaving the true fate of Juni and Juli uncertain. Juni returns in the Super Street Fighter 4 OVA, where Juri storms a Shadaloo mountain base to capture the dolls for SIN. Juni and Juli are the last two dolls to be defeated, though Juri still beats them with ease. As Juri transports them to her aircraft, Guile and Cammy intervene. Guile is knocked out, and although Cammy manages to board the aircraft transporting the dolls, she is overpowered as well. Juri tosses the unconscious Juni out of the plane, sending Cammy tumbling out with her. The two survive, only thanks to a snowy mountainside breaking their fall. In Super Street Fighter 4, Juni appears in Cammy's storyline, now hospitalized due to her injuries. Cammy watches over her, and when Juni finally awakes, it becomes clear she suffers from amnesia. Cammy offers reassurance, noting from experience how frightening memory loss can be. By Street Fighter V, Juni has recovered enough to live under Cammy's protection at Delta Red. She trains, learns new skills at her own pace, and sees Cammy as both mentor, protector, and sister. The two reunite after Cammy escapes the Shadaloo base, and during a quiet moment talking about cats, Cammy asks whether Juni is happy, concerned that the trauma of her past is too much for her, and potentially for the remaining dolls, should they be freed as well. Before Juni can answer, they are ambushed by Shadaloo soldiers led by Vega. Cammy shields Juni during the confrontation, promising to eventually save all of her sisters. After Vega retreats, Cammy ponders whether the other dolls even want to be saved. Juni states that, though she is uncertain that she is happy now, she is happy Cammy saved her, and knows she will be able to save the others. Unlike Juli, Juni never appears alongside the other dolls in Street Fighter V's main story, A Shadow Falls, implying that Shadaloo never managed to recapture her, likely thanks to Cammy's and Delta Red's constant vigilance. In Street Fighter VI, Juni remains close to Cammy, and appears in her arcade story through phone conversations, even giving Cammy a special cell phone accessory. And a piece of art for Cammy's birthday shows Juni attending the celebration, where we learn she has become a surprisingly skilled pastry chef. The event also implies that Juni and Decapre may be living with Cammy, now forming an unusual but heartfelt family unit, built from the remnants of Shadaloo's broken programming. Decapre's story is perhaps the darkest of the three. Like the others, she was moulded by Shadaloo, but her fate was uniquely cruel. Another of Bison's clones, Decapre is identical to Cammy, but her face was horribly scarred during her conditioning, forcing her to wear a mask and fueling a deep, tormented hatred. Decapre became volatile, unstable, and prone to violent outbursts. As mentioned previously, Decapre and the other dolls are ambushed at a secret Shadaloo mountain base by Juli. They are then shipped to Seth's laboratory for experimentation, and in Ultra Street Fighter IV, Decapre fully awakens. Soon scientists attempt to release her from Bison's direct control. As she regains fragments of her identity, a flood of traumatic memories consumes her. The pain of her transformation and the lingering connection to Cammy. Enraged, she finally shatters her stasis pod and swears to kill Killer B. Despite her instability, she continues to perform her primary directive, assassinating Seth. After defeating him, she prepares to execute him when Cammy arrives on the scene. Decapre attacks in a frenzy, but collapses mid-battle. When Cammy tries to help, Decapre removes her mask, revealing her scarred face and the depth of her anguish. Bison then appears and informs Cammy that Decapre is doomed. Her body is rigged with a dead man switch, a failsafe that slowly destroys her mind and body if she breaks free from his control. As Bison taunts them with the possibility of a bargain, Decapre reaches out to Cammy. Cammy reluctantly watches as Bison takes Decapre, knowing it's the only way her sister will live. Decapre returns in Street Fighter V: A Shadow Falls, fighting alongside the doll Mars during a mission to infiltrate the Kanzuki estate and retrieve the pieces that operate Shadaloo's doomsday devices, the Black Moons. The pair fail, however, with Mars getting captured. As Decapre retreats, she appears to be becoming more unstable. Later, she confronts Ken, Chun-Li, Laura, Sean, and Cammy in Brazil, her mind seeming to have destabilized even further as the psycho power within her increases. Cammy, recognizing Decapre's torment, fights and defeats her just before the police attempt to arrest her. Knowing that Decapre's humanity must still be buried within her mind, Cammy knocks out the officers to protect her, moments before Juli crashes onto the scene and helps the pair escape. At Union Station in London, Decapre wakes in agony and immediately attacks Cammy once again. Still consumed by hatred and confusion, Decapre forces Cammy to knock her unconscious. The scene is then interrupted by Vega, who attempts to kill Cammy. Juli intervenes, however, saving the former doll and her sister. Decapre regains control of her own mind and later saves Cammy from Vega at the final assault on the Shadaloo base, fighting besides one another against the remaining dolls, who have been souped up on psycho power. When Bison and Shadaloo are finally defeated, Decapre's future is, for the first time, no longer bound to the dictator. In Street Fighter VI, Cammy reveals that Decapre is now part of Delta Red, no longer an enemy, but a comrade. The two living as twin sisters, finally able to share a more peaceful life. An image of Cammy and Decapre sitting together at a cafe symbolizes the life she was never allowed to have before. When you look at Juli, Juni, and Decapre side by side, you begin to see what it meant to be a doll. Juli and Juni embody the doll program at its most controlled. Their loyalty, Their precision, their stillness, it all speaks to identities suffocated beneath the conditioning of psychopower. Their tragedy isn't simply in how much they lost, but in how little we truly get to see of who they were before everything was taken away. Decapre, meanwhile, is what happens when the Doll Project pushes past obedience and into the realm of cruelty. Where Juli and Juni are smothered into silence, Decapre is shattered into violence. She's a clone, deliberately broken, scarred, unstable, and left with the agonizing burden of remembering just enough about her past to hate it. Her rage towards Cammy isn't born out of rivalry, but of resentment for the life she was denied. Where Cammy escaped, Decapre remained behind to endure the torment. She is what happens when you weaponize trauma itself. These three are not villains, they are victims who learn to survive inside the machinery of a monster. Yet, they also remind us that no matter how deep the conditioning goes, identity fights back. Memory claws its way to the surface. Humanity, suppressed, battered, or reshaped, always endures. If you enjoy diving into the stories of these three dolls, hit that like button, subscribe for future Street Fighter lore, and head on over to the abyss that is my Patreon to support the channel more. Let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see more videos about Bison's dolls. Thanks for watching, and as always, be excellent to yourselves and one another. I'll see you soon.